Axons Unleashed.
G'day ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Axons Unleashed. I tell you what, we've got an absolute cracking guest with us today. Interestingly, the last podcast we did was with a young fellow, that was his very first ever podcast. Now we're talking to someone who's really experienced doing podcasts, far more experienced than I, so I'll probably learn a couple of tips and techniques from the man himself, Craig Ball. Mate, welcome to Axons Unleashed. How are you?
Thanks, Robbie. Really good, mate. Fantastic to be here. And I was really excited when you put out the point on Facebook that you're looking for people to jump on. I thought, yeah, I can't wait, because I've been watching what you've been doing and seeing some of your guests and thought, gee, it'd be great to get a chance to come on here. So very excited.
Mate, no dramas at all. Yeah, there's a bit of a couple of private Facebook groups that we're all on. So the Double Diamond boys there about our time down in SOCOM. So I said to them, like, hey, I'm here to branch out a little bit more and put some heavy hitters on here about what your experiences were joining the military, how you transition, and most importantly, what you're doing now. If I can use that little segue, ladies and gents, here's just a bit of a teaser about the expert that Craig's become straight off of his YouTube channel. So if you want to learn how to improve your mental health, don't go anywhere. If you want to help deal and consider with your anxiety differently, that's going to help me a lot. I absolutely know. I'm not going anywhere. How to accept yourself unconditionally. What a fantastic term that is. And then how to remove the negative energy that surrounds your emotional upset in order to open up yourself to greater levels of happiness. I tell you what, if we can finish with those four big things, mate, among others, no doubt, have a chance to go to Craig's YouTube channel. No doubt, Daniel, you'll put it in the comments there. There are literally dozens and dozens of awesome videos. What do we, how to get control, how to have an intellectual humility, how to get absolutely ready, why being kinder can improve your life, etc., etc. Like it's phenomenal what you're doing out there, mate. And just let's get straight into it. When you live a bit of a life of protected identity status, and now you and I, project ourselves out there so much and put ourselves out there on for all to criticize. What's that like? What's that been like for you?
Well, good, because I suppose one of the great things of having been through what we've been through to serve at that unit is you tend to not to resonate easily with being embarrassed, and you're happy to make mistakes. Goodness knows I made enough in my career. So
Me too.
You seem to be able to fail faster and to get out there and keep doing it. And for me, the goal has always been, if I'm presenting, whether it's in front of an audience, to a camera, whatever it is, that's the goal. So I've achieved something by getting out there and having a crack. And that's been one of the drivers for me. Plus also the big thing that keeps me going is, and I'm yet to discover it, you might be able to direct me to where to find this, but I know of 6 mates that have suicided since I left in 2014. And I don't like to number them, but the 5th one, Luke Hearn, was a clearance diver. We were doing a bit of work because I'd done comms for those guys when I was at the unit on team. So we reconnected. I was doing a presentation at With Me, one of their open days, and we reconnected, and he was working in projects. One of my lines of consulting is change management. I was getting him help to move into change because he had a great personality, perfect person. Got him a mentor, and then we were due to catch up the following Monday. This was a Thursday or Friday, and he didn't show up. And I got a text message on the Saturday night following from our former platoon commander saying, "Is this still your number?" I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "Get on WhatsApp. I've got some bad news," and it was what I expected. I feared. I hoped it wasn't. It was completely surreal, but that he'd taken his life. So at that point, I drew a line in the sand, and I've been doing a lot of what I'm doing today. Some parts of it I've been doing for about 20 years, since before full-time military came into my life. And that's a part of the reason, well, a bit on that when we get to it, but about the whys, about how I went into full-time military. But I drew a line in the sand and went, I've got to focus as much as I can on helping men's mental health, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to help improve those outcomes for guys and help them to realise that they're not alone.
Yeah, such a powerful message and such a current topic, of course. Literally, Daniel, when you and I had Sean Spain in here probably about a year ago, and then, a few months ago, we also got the note that, that Sean had decided to take his own life due to frustrations with deviating, etc., and all that's, public knowledge. So, mate, it's a real For people like you and I that try and live in a positive space and pass on so much information and try and make other people's lives better, sometimes a couple are going to slip through the cracks, and we, unfortunately, we want to be able to make our net stronger so that doesn't occur, but you never know what's going on in other people's lives. So that's going to be a real outcome of this podcast right now, is just tell your story, how it fits into, effectively making people's lives better, mate. So, yeah, thanks for that little opening. Let's get into it. Where'd you grow up and why'd you join the Army? When was that?
Okay, so I had 2 stabs at joining the Army. I grew up in Epping, in
North
Sydney.
Yep.
And I was a bit of a late starter. I kind of liked the idea as a kid and thought it'd be great to do. But as where my life sort of took me, it wasn't until I was approaching my mid-20s that I realised this is something I really wanted to do. I'd had some great influences. At about the age of 21, I'd worked with a couple of blokes. I'd done a lot of work in hospitality, mostly working in bars, and I'd worked with a couple of guys, one whose name probably became quite infamous with the Underbelly Badness series. These 2 blokes were working as doormen at the Bourbon and Beefsteak, and they just had these great stories. And I realised pretty early on that I'd made not the best choice in choosing hospitality as a fairly short-term career path, I suppose. Yeah. And I had this desire just to get outdoors and to do stuff. And these guys had been members at one commando regiment as reservists, and their stories just sounded great. It sounded quite adventurous, and I thought, well, look, I want to do something other than, back then people used to smoke in bars. Other than a smoke-filled room with a roof not much bigger than my head and all blacked out most of the night working, I thought there's got to be more to life than this. So it's like a coffin, really. So it was at that point I started making moves towards talking to defence recruiting and getting part of it.
It's funny.
By the time I joined up, would have been about 27.
What, and Ross, 27 when you joined. It's interesting, isn't it, Daniel, that we've had a few people come on now that have been mature age recruits. So that's going to be interesting to see what it was like being at Kapooka and hanging around 17, 18-year-olds and, you being, some 10 years older. It's interesting that, myself included and many other guys that I joined with. So what year are we talking about with you, just to put it in context?
Okay, so 1998, I think I joined first of all. And I joined as a reservist when they still had 2-week recruit courses and 2-week infantry IATs.
Wow.
So, yeah, right. It was very different. I took some of the advice I'd been given and chose to join first just to make sure I liked the Army, make sure that was a bit of a go. So I made a silly decision, but it was just because it was close to home. I joined Sydney University Regiment as an enlisted, as a digger, and became an infantry, got into infantry that way. And yeah, there wasn't much going on there other than playing enemy party.
It wouldn't have been. But it was about that time, sort of 96, 97, 98, that, especially myself and a bunch of other guys that I was with, I was a young bombardier at A Battery jumping with 3-hour air raid at Holsworthy during that time, just before I went back down to Kapooka as a recruit instructor. But we were all working bars and nightclubs and bouncers at night time or on the weekends to get a bit of extra income. Because there was no deployments back then. You were on pretty shit money, pissing up against the wall. None of us had girlfriends and wives and all that sort of stuff. So, we were all living pay to pay. So it's interesting that you got out of that environment of working in hospitality. Then when we'd all been in 6 or 7 years, we're like, fuck, let's go and do a bit of bouncing and let's go and, work a couple of bars or whatever else. So yeah, it's interesting when you said that. I haven't had anyone on the podcast that went through your type of basic training then. So what was that like? So 2 weeks to become a civilian and then you got a soldier. As I'm sure you're aware, down in bloody Kapooka, you haven't even learned how to make your bed and march properly and put cam cream on after 2 weeks. So what was it like for you then?
Well, thankfully, when I came, now there's a bit more to the story. I did actually eventually do the full 3 months at Kapooka, but that came a bit later. Now
I'm all ears, mate.
Yeah, so it was a funny experience, but I was very glad that I got in and did it eventually that way to sort of break away from my reservist past. And when people ask me how long I served for, I only really talk about the full-time years.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
But yeah, it was interesting. You came back different, but you didn't come back that different. And there's only so much they can teach you in 2 weeks, as you'd expect. It's really basic. I don't know why the Army made that decision, but I mean, we've all seen the huge amount of cost cutting that goes on from time to time. And I think that was on the tail end. It was one of the very last 2-week recruit courses. They were all going up to a month and then longer from that. But it was they couldn't teach you much, and they couldn't teach you how to shoot. I mean, infantry IET for 2 weeks, you got a bit of PT every day. You went bush maybe once for a bit.
Yeah.
You dug a few pits. You didn't do much. There was the thing I could never get over was there's such a small amount of emphasis on shooting.
Right, yeah, that's very, very interesting indeed. Tell me about the other people that were on the 2-week course. Were they like you, professionals, and like people that have been in the real world for quite a while, just looking to scratch that itch and maybe doing a bit of army stuff on the side?
There was a few from different backgrounds. One guy in particular who I stayed in touch with for a while, he did a fair bit of rugby, ended up as a financial planner for one of the banks, and he actually went across, because I was getting stuffed around at Sydney University Regiment. They wouldn't let me go over to One Commando, or they tried to make it difficult. And he didn't have those problems, and he went across a bit earlier. And I remember things were starting to, I was starting to get a good bit of support at Sydney University Regiment. I was looking to go on sub 1 for corporal and all that sort of stuff. And I was thinking, this is going okay. And then he called me up one day and spoke to me at length on the phone to say to me, listen, you're wasting your time there. You've got to get over here. This is where you want to be.
That's where the real stuff
and
is.
It was like the universe was going, yeah, come on, this is what you joined in the first place for, to test yourself, to see if you have what it takes. Get on with the job,
So did you go and do that, or how did you eventually get to Kapuka?
So I eventually got to Kapuka when I re-enlisted. So I re-enlisted at 33. I'd been across to One Commando as a reservist. I'd attempted selection in 2000. I'd failed selection my first attempt. I attempted it again. I nearly failed it the second time, but somehow scraped through under the watchful eye and guidance of Hans Fleer, rest in peace. Yeah. And he was incredibly influenced to me. But then when I came back off those courses, and I made the mistake and I consider it to be a mistake of not going to East Timor when I had the opportunity to help reinforce that deployment. I went back to One Commando, and although it's got its pluses and everything, it just felt like I was going to something, and it was a bit of a boys' club back then, and it just sort of petered out for me. Yeah. So I found myself out of the Army Reserve, back working doors, doing all doing stuff, trying to keep things going. I'd had a period of time where I'd worked for an entrepreneur to develop myself as a speaker in the very early 2000s, not long after passing selection. And I was at a bit of a loose end. I was working very hard to try to get things going, get my speaking career on track and everything else. And what happened was a friend of mine came to visit, and I always had this dream of going back to the Army in some capacity, I was telling myself. And a really good mate of mine stopped by once again and said, why don't you consider a full-time contract, even if it's just for 4 years? And he said, your chances these days of getting deployed is very high, and it'll just help you out a lot. And what it's actually done for me has been much more significant than that. So at 33, 2006, I went down to Kapuka. I did the full 3 months. I'd been out for a couple of years at least by that stage. And it was, once again, way more of an eye-opener, because at least the previous time I'd tried, done a recruit course, I was not too distant from everybody in age. I wasn't that much older. I might have been 26-ish. But this time it was stark. There was one other guy who was older than me, but there was a couple of guys around the 30 mark, but everybody else was much younger. So
Jesus, so let me just recap. You adult, joined the Army Reserve, did your 2-week recruit course, did a couple of weeks of infantry IETs, did a few weekends and Tuesdays, whatever else, eventually then morphed across to One Commando Regiment, did some form of commando selection, then went back as a civvy, and then jumped into Kapuka as a 33-year-old.
Yep.
Fuck me. That's a technical term for wow. I'm like, Jesus, that is. You said there's a bit of a story behind it. I wasn't expecting that, but tell me what it was like, because I loved my time down at Kapuka as an RI. I would have loved having a 33-year-old there. I'll be like, pull him aside, righto, Bullfed, you and me. You're going to fucking tell me what's going on with those young, I only had guys in my platoon, by the way, but yeah.
Well, that was something that occurred, I believe, throughout my career at various stages, because often senior officers, we'd be about the same age, so they'd have the ear of the digger because they could talk to you.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
Or a certain degree of respect because you'd had a crack at life in the outside world, and you got to an age and gone, no, this is what I want to be doing with myself. It helped that this was my best mate at this stage, was the Sergeant PTI. He'd been the PTI at One Commando, and we'd stayed in touch ever since. And he was coming down for a posting in Kapuka, and as luck would have it, defence recruiting didn't stuff me around too much, so I actually managed to make it there while still posting there. They do like to make retreads wait, I know that much, and pretend to lose their paperwork and just to see if you're keen. But it was good from that point of view. I had some very interesting dealings. I had a corporal in charge of us who was from 5'7", I think, and he was very full on, and he started to try to, give me a bit of grief and G me up a little bit about having been from One Commando, and I actually pulled him aside and said, I don't appreciate this treatment.
Wow, good on you.
I'd had dealings with those guys, and I don't think they had the best name in the rest of the military. And I said, look, I'm trying to get away from all of that. I'm just here. I'm happy to be a soldier. I had no expectations of whether my past was going to help me through. I had no expectations of any of that. I just thought I'm going to come in here, do some time, get a trade, and then decide what life's going to hold from there. I'd actually tried to leave a lot of my past behind. And so even to the point on the day we enlisted, I was filling out the paperwork and it said a 4-year contract. And I knew that my role was a 6-year contract, and I got him to correct it.
No, tell me, I'm interested. What was old mate's reaction to you as a mature age recruit, pulling him aside and go, "Hey, Corporal, can I have a bit of a chat?" And put you serious adult. You're probably older than him too. He's probably down there as a 25, 26-year-old buddy. Young guy, thought he was flying through, and then he's come up to a worldly and well-spoken and more mature Craig Ball going, "Listen, fuckface, I'm not here. You're trying to play that game. Leave me alone."
I was fucking angry.
What was his reaction?
So angry when talking to someone that my jaw shook.
Yeah. What was his reaction though?
He said, he apologised. He said, obviously, I've worked with some of those guys. They're not the best guys to work with. Obviously, you're not like that. You've made this effort. And because I put him up, I said, what's with the public humiliation? And I even asked blokes in my room at the time, I said, am I being paranoid or am I being over the top by thinking that I'm being treated this way? They go, no, that's definitely directed at you. I go, sweet. So I go down and stood on the line and said, hey, I want to have a chat. Came into a little interview room. I said, he goes, what's the problem? I said, everything you said from 2 o'clock till now. And he started about it and he goes, are you okay about it? I said, and I just went, I'm pissed.
Good on you.
Yeah, launched him. And the next week he said, thank you. He said, I said, well, look, I'm not here to screw anyone's career around. I'll deal with the person that gives me the shit at the time. And that's the way I've always rolled. And I just really put it down on the line. And yeah, at the end of the recruit course, we were having a beer at the boozer when we had our march out and everything. And he came up and wanted to shake my hand. And I was having a beer and I went, cheers like that. He goes, no, I want to shake your hand.
Good on you.
It's pretty cool.
What's the lesson out of that I'm observing is that if you fundamentally know something is right or wrong, have the internal courage to stand up for yourself and say something or address it in a positive, mature, respectful way. And that's what you did, and have a look at the outcome you got, mate.
Exactly. Courage in your convictions. I think if you can back yourself, even if you're wrong later, there's no harm in apologising if you realise you were wrong later, or you can say, look, that might have been a mistake or whatever. But seriously, back yourself 100%, because, you're the only person at the end of the day that in many occasions, that you've got to defend often. And it might be your integrity, or it might be anything else in your life. These days, for me, it's with some of my clients, I call out bullying in the workplace. I'm the bully's worst day, man, when I call them out. It does not go down well. And it's often not me. People don't bully me these days, but it's defending people in my team. And I'm like, I am stuffed if my team members are going to cop that shit, because they often don't feel they can defend themselves. So,
where'd you go after Kapuka then? Tell us that story. And at IETs and first unit, etc.
I signed up to be a electronic warfare operator until I discovered what it meant, and the security clearance required that you may not get, and all this other stuff. And I had a bit of a life prior to that. I was under no illusions. Plus, I was also aware of the fact that I was not getting any younger. So I thought, I got some of the way into the training for it, the School of Languages, and went, no. I'm going to get out, go back to School of Signals and become a radio operator. And that's exactly what I did. So that took a bit longer. I was there for about 18 months. And prior, like about a week prior to my IT starting for radio operator, we had in the holding platoon, we had a sergeant major who was commando qualified. And he pulled me aside. He said, do you want to go to 4RAR? I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind. He goes, well, do you want to go or not? I'm thinking, yeah, of course I do. But I go, yeah, yes, of course I did. And tried to sound like I was backing myself. And he goes, it's done. I've already organised it. You're going. I go, brilliant. And because I thought, look, I was still in a bit of a phase in my life where I didn't 100% know where the Army was going to take me. But I thought, if you turn down an opportunity like this will be a career limiter, irrespective of how you feel. And I'm just glad every day that I said yes and went for it. Post my ITs, it sort of looked after me a little bit as well. We had someone they didn't suicide, they drug overdosed at the end of the course. School signals corps is a bit loose, and overdosed on heroin. And afterwards, the Army being the Army, everybody on the course had to do a 2 or 3 day drug training course. Don't do drugs, or somebody standing there saying drugs are bad, okay, or something. And they came up to me afterwards and said, you don't have to go. And they said, if anyone asks, just say your unit won't release you. And that was it. I got a bit of special treatment. And then I rocked up first night, or the night before I was due to parade at 4 hour.
What year we're talking now?
We're talking 2008.
Right.
2006. And it was, so I signed on the dotted line December 2006. By September 2008, I was going to my unit, and I showed up the night before, and there was a SIG sergeant on, Spud, and he was in Charlie Company, and he took me under his wing. Basically, him and Adrian Humphreys were on duty together, and we just sat around and chatted most of the night. And I said, there's no lines ready for you, just stay here the night. And we chatted for ages, and they wanted to know about everything. And then the next day, they took me into Charlie Company for the rest of the year, and then I was posted to Alpha Company after that. So it was a really good intro from guys that knew their stuff, I thought. Yeah,
nice. Just trying to think. I was finishing my 3 years down at Duntroon, meeting some other guys, and then went straight across as a task group S5 in December 2008. And then got back mid-2009 and then took up OC Opposite Hawk Company. So that's when you and I would have first run into each other in the unit then. And as we were sort of talking off air quickly, can't pinpoint exactly when Craig met Robbie, when there's 700 dudes in the unit and you're literally crossing paths 100 miles an hour and, a bunch of different capabilities. So did you have to do selection again out of interest?
No, I didn't have to.
Right.
Apparently I found out at one point, though, administratively, I was the most audited person in the Army. They audited my paperwork, and I remember there was a captain who, from it looked like he walked. I would have guessed.
Those
Goldie.
bastards.
Yeah, Goldie, his name was.
I know Goldie.
He goes to me, mate, if they keep pushing this, he goes, everybody at SO Command is auditing you. He goes, if they keep pushing this, I'm gonna call up Hansflea myself and get him to work as to be a reference for you.
He was at S1 at the unit. He was taking care, because that's when we were going through the DFRT to get a bunch of heap extra pay, and everyone was, they were auditing everyone's files. So I know exactly what you mean.
And they didn't want anybody to get that extra couple of bucks or whatever it was. It sounds like a lot of extra at the time compared with what people were making, and a lot of the other parts of the Army might have been jealous of this extra money and derogatory comments made about people in the unit and so forth. But because of that, but the Army's a funny place, and I think to a degree there's a bit of jealousy that they were getting paid more. Despite if the average person came and saw what someone at the unit did in an average week or day, they would go, no, I'll go back to what I'm doing. Thanks.
I'll go and shut the fuck up. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you're facing danger, doing using various high school stuff, etc., etc. What's your most fondest memory of SOCOM?
Wow, the mates. Having the best mates.
Yeah.
And there's multiple memories that tie into that. But probably, so having mates and how I finished on my 2012, my second deployment to Afghanistan, that was seriously the highlight of my career. I got tasked with mentoring the partnering force, who were Matullah Khan's Relos, the special police. And the feedback I got, not only from my boss at the time, who was one of those old SAS veterans who'd turned into he'd ASWOC'd as well when he got far enough down the track. And he was just a legend. He's just a great bloke. And he wrote me a PR so I could pretty much walk on water. It was nice. I couldn't believe it. I used to take it to job interviews and say, hey, this is what I did in the military. Think what I can do for you. But
good on you.
It was just a great experience. And, the relationships I built with my mates, and that was just second to none.
Yeah, good. Tell us about, so how many, we'll talk about you, when someone asks how long you did the military, you're like, when I went to Kapuka to when I got out, how many years was that in total then?
7.5.
7, yeah, mate. So yeah, and spanning over the first time you really went and did your 2-week course there, you probably, the better part of 15 years all up that you would have been exposed to the military in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, my certificate of service says something around 12.5, something like that.
Okay, fantastic. Tell us about when you first thought you were going to be able to transition then, or when did that bug started to, that pattern thought bubble in your mind?
I planned it. I had it planned from get-go.
Wow, a lot of people don't say that.
Say again?
A lot of people don't say that.
No, I had a plan. I was ready to go. So whilst I thought it was a bit of I was lost before I went into full-time army and didn't have stuff fully together and all the rest of it, everything I developed in the civilian world helped me to get out. And I was all from day one, though, I was looking for opportunities. Things, could I pick up a trade here or there that would set me up outside? What could I do? And I was looking around prior to my second deployment, and I'd even had a chat so the deployment cycles being first half of the year and the second half of the year, I took an early deployment when it was offered to me, just ahead of my cycle had I've stayed with Delta Company, so that I could come back, tidy up everything, and hopefully take an easy posting out of that. And I spoke to that with Schema. The Schema rep said, "Yep, no worries." I already knew him from School of SIGs. He said, "Mate, it's considered set in stone." Well, someone cracked the stone when I was over there on my second deployment. I had to stay for another year, so I got a 5th year. Ended up being on tag for another year, which was good. Gave me a bit more time to explore, because I came back after that 2012 deployment. I hadn't just been mentoring, I'd been, ambassador work, cultural awareness, project management, learning development, but also managing relationships, putting out fires, all kinds of things. And we successfully got the capability to work over 200 Ks away, HF radios being such that it doesn't take a lot of hard technology to do that. But the relationships I built were incredible. And I came home and I was finishing a psych degree, and just through networking, someone said, "Oh, you're looking for change management. That's what you're looking for do." And through that, by staying at the unit another year, I was able to once a month catch up with a mate who I'd been a reservist with, who just so happened he was a change manager. And I started trying to find out everything I could about that. And then when the time came, I posted out at the end of 2013. And I then went to HMAS Canberra. I had a mate who'd been dragged out of 152 or kicked out of 152 and sent there through probably no fault of his own, and he just wanted to get back to SO Command comms any way that he could, so 126 was an easy option for him, and we swapped out, and then within a couple of months I was gone from there too, so I didn't muck around too much.
Mate, it's good. Think about the cascading or avalanching rapid implementation of new technologies and capabilities that the unit was going through 10, 11, 12, 13, like change management and being open to change and embracing change and implementing change is probably humans normally don't like change. Humans love a habit. Humans love safety and security and surety. But just for you, like, I feel like you were just on the roller coaster and you were fucking just loving every single bit of it. And then that no doubt would have helped you when you got out.
Yeah, military's no exception. Military doesn't like change much. But one of my first roles, one of my sort of critical roles that set up my career, I've been doing this now for 8.5, it'll be 9 years this year, was I'd had a couple of contracts. They hadn't gone so well for a little bit. And then I got a job at one of the government agencies. And one of those was going around to people with iPads, teaching them how to use a system. And it was so close to, helping grunts with radios. Here's how we fill the radio. Here's how we manage the radio. Here's how we do all this stuff. It was so close to it that it almost felt like I was back in the military for all the good reasons,
Yeah, nice. That's fantastic. I think that's it's the greatest gift that one can get, receive, and implement is finding out who you were in the military and taking some of those soulful skills, not necessarily techful skills, into an endeavor in the real world and then go ahead and crack on with it. It's just, did you feel like you created your own soft landing?
Yeah, 100%. And I'd done it in a way where through networking, I'd helped to get a start from another ex-military person, not just this first mate who was already doing it. I've made a new mate through some defence networking contacts who had been in the Royal Navy. He was a project manager. He understood what I brought to the table. And then when I got this particular role that I just mentioned, the actual program manager had worked with military. She knew what my trade capability was, and she knew it'd be an easy fit. It was like, no worries. When I came and told her, like, I can't believe this. She goes, yeah, I knew you would. I knew you'd just take through it like a duck to water.
Yeah, it's so good.
No,
and also,
that's
like,
one of my drivers as well. I like to try to help people getting out of the military who may have an aptitude for that skill set, because it can be a very liberating and well-paid career.
Yeah, nice. Certainly taking some of the knowledges and skills and experiences from the military is really handy to be able to make a transition, but making sure you've got the right personality and character to never, ever burn a bridge. So then one day, as you just rightly said, you'll meet someone that you used to know in the military and like, oh yeah, Craig or Robbie, they're good blokes. Let's shortcut them and bring them straight to the top of the pile. So it's really good to know you kept your networks open as well when you transition.
That's 100%. And never burning a bridge is such a significant thing, because I get a lot of work from recruiters, and sometimes recruiters, they don't, perhaps some of them, I've had certain ones that strike me as not being the most, not carrying this particular ones that I came across, not having the most integrity perhaps at times, or make me suspect that they didn't, or, perhaps I hadn't been told the 100% truth. I never told any of them. I never got in anyone's face. I just said thank you. And then when I needed them somewhere down the track, I got a job. And I had a mate from school I was working with once, we're chatting regularly. He wanted to try and get in my line of work, and he has done successfully. And he told me once, he called a recruiter a liar. I go, oh, dude, stop. I can't help you if you're going to be like this.
Yeah,
I cannot help you anymore if you're going to do this.
It wasn't him that called him his liar. It was the ego. Let's use that as a bit of a bridge, mate, into what you're doing. Like, just in plain language, what do you do to help people's mental health and manage anxiety and just make people happier in life?
Well, I'm a mentor. I'm a mental health and empowerment mentor. So what that means is I develop ways of interacting with people, whether that's presenting, holding workshops. I've just started a men's walk up here where I've moved to Central Coast. We moved to the Central Coast in August, brought the family up here, bought a house, and mental health is, or suicide is above the state average up here. So we started a men's walk. I had a lot of guidance from the guys at the Penrith Men's Walk where we used to live, and they run the most successful walk in the state. So I adopted similar principles, and now I've got a walk that goes every Thursday night. And I've been on umpteen counselling courses over the years, so I just let people talk. Some of the things that I share with them is some basic principles of how to start thinking about improving your mental health. Things such as forgiveness, forgiving yourself, for God's sake. Give yourself permission to let go and to be okay with what's happened. You can't control the past. You can only control how you feel about the past. So what are we going to do differently? Realizing that everything in life is a choice. So there's a bunch of principles that I bring in. And then what I actually teach once I've got people and I've helped to start to open them up to what I talk about is I use the original version of what today has been bastardized into CBT. Like a lot of veterans, I've had CBT done to me. It was a very watered down version. The original version of CBT is rational emotive behavior therapy. That's what I use with people because it's more like a philosophy of living. It's deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy. And I use that to help people to shape their outcomes for themselves. And it is, I first discovered it back in 2001 when I was working for that entrepreneur I mentioned earlier. And that forms the core of what I share with people. But there's heaps to it, and it's really just being there and being able, offering and opening yourself up. The consulting work with change management gives me lots of opportunity to teach that. My current biggest client has got me rolling it out across their business of 175 people, and it's just growing. The opportunity to do more and more of it,
mate. When I watched the Top Gun Maverick movie, when Val Kilmer wrote on the screen there, it's time to let go. You were sitting next to me on that movie. I'm like, fucking hell, that was like very powerful. Easier said than done, no doubt. I still have dreams now that I'm still in the military or I'm there as a visiting lecturer or I've gone back and then something happens and then boom, you're not there anymore. Like, you realize that your time in the military has now come to an end. And I'm like, oh shit, it's really sad to be in the military, but I've been really glad that I've been doing something ever since. And it's just a weird fucking blend of like elements of my life in your experience, when you're speaking to people like me that like were in the military for a little while and maybe got out with a little bit of rank under their name or to their name, how are they finding it letting go? And like, what's some of the, if you can pass on some advice to some of our listeners there about if you have transitioned and you're going through some identity crisis, or you're about to transition, you're like, oh fuck, I'm not going to be a lieutenant colonel in the real world anymore. No champ. And by the way, no one gives a fuck that you've got 25 fucking post nominals either. It's time to let go. How do you help them sort of, with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, realizing that you're a human being at the end of the day. So there's going to be some rude shocks. I had an interview once and they said to me, look, we're a bit concerned about your background being ex-military. I go, why is that? They said, we've had ex-military change managers come through here. I said, well, all of them officers? They said, yes. I said, that's why they didn't last. I said, I was a digger my whole career. I had to achieve everything by negotiation. I said to them, here's how officers do change in the military. But Friday, everyone gets kept back after 4 o'clock. You're told Monday you'll do it differently this way. Everyone comes in Monday and does it because they know they're going to get charged if not. In the real world, people don't give a shit. And just like you said, they don't care about your post-nominals. So think about one of the best advice I gave to a guy, and he then went on and started a consulting career in business and claimed this advice helped him set up this career. I'm not going to name him, but he's a really good guy. Was he'd been a digger for 6 years and then became an officer and retired as a captain. I said to him, okay, you're going into this consulting world. I want you to forget everything you've ever learned as an officer. Go in with the eyes of a digger. Go in with wide open eyes, sense of wonder, just an understanding that this is new and you can handle it. But just go in and take it all in. And I said, then as you move forward, pick and choose those skill sets you learn as an officer that are going to make you better at doing this. Okay. Some of those things aren't going to, but some of them will. And some of those wise leadership lessons and that kind of stuff can only serve you. So pick them, but remember, be humble and remember, post-military, and we all have stuff, that conditioning of that training never, ever leaves you fully, as you know. Just start to let go of it, and day by day, you will move forward. But always remember, the best qualities, if you let them, the things that serve, the things that make you more efficient, more disciplined, and everything else will always stick with you. And they're the ones you want to focus on.
There's no doubt about it, and we've all seen it before. And I got to see it down at Duntroon as well, because as you probably remember, I was a sergeant changeover also, 12 years in OR, 11 years as an officer. I saw it when I was a senior NCO. The best officers are those ones that have had exposure to being a digger. Fucking end of story. Full stop. That's not an opinion. That is a statement. You even know that there is an internal rank structure at Duntroon, and you're a digger and you're a lance corporal and whatever else. It's fabricated. It's like being in the maths experiment, if I can use that terminology, right? It's not the real world, but they don't really know what it's like to be a digger. But you and I and everyone else who went it through that way, they really do. So I can categorically say some of the success that I've had in business have not come from those things that I learnt being an officer. It come from those things that I learnt being a digger or a junior NCO, where you've got to be able to build genuine relationships with people, not force your way in by the rank that you wear. Have an authentic personality where you're not trying to be someone you're not, or just be yourself. And you care so much you don't fucking care. So it's really, really interesting that some of those things, like the knowledge, skills and attributes we got as a digger in the real world, serve us more than some of the technical skills you get when you go up the ranks. That's the takeaway I just got from you anyway.
Yeah, that's 100% right. That's exactly where I'm taking that. It's a difficult world to try to navigate, but I mean, diggers have always got this level of preparedness. They're good to go in so many ways. They don't have to, thankfully, they don't have to sit there and do paperwork and sign things off for the next 6 months. And also, diggers don't do this. And I know not all officers do this, but some do. Some take the successes of their diggers and make it look like they're awesome, like they led them or that they had some. Often they didn't. And that taking that pride, and I've worked with people, man. I've worked with people who've never been in the military who take, who like pelicans, they fly in, shit on everything. They try to take other people's, I'm not joking, man. They try to take other people's credit that they, and they get up there and they have a go, and then they try and bludgeon get out of stuff, and they're so obvious, but they still keep getting paid. I'm telling you, do
you find it sometimes frustrating when you go to a corporate organisation and there's no military background or mindset in that organisation, and they're they're devoid of culture, they're devoid of leadership, they're devoid of direction, and like you feel like you want to fucking shake him and go, you should have bloody went back to the military. Like just tell us about that.
Okay, here's the lesson, all right, out of those questions. Firstly, they're going to have culture no matter what. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad.
True.
But, okay, if there's nothing in any way resembling anything that looks like the military, that's fantastic, because I could be there all day. You're never going to run out of work with an organization like that, so don't ever underestimate it. We don't have time to be frustrated. There's too much to do. We don't have time to use. See, that's my example of letting go of those things from the military. You know, you come in, something wasn't working, you'd get in there and you'd make it. You don't need to do that. You come in, you answer the questions, you support and empower those people, because it's not their fault that they didn't have that experience or that exposure, that level of discipline. It's nobody's fault that they do it. They're just doing the best that they can. So being humble, being forgiving of others, and being accepting. So when I talk about accepting yourself unconditionally, it's a bit like forgiveness. When you learn to forgive yourself, you also learn to forgive others. Same as when you learn to accept yourself unconditionally, which is the opposite or the antithesis of self-esteem, which is a damaging, horrible concept that hurts people and holds them back. So accepting yourself unconditionally means you can accept others unconditionally. You don't need to like them. Okay, just like with forgiveness, you can forgive them, but you don't need to accept what they've done as being good. It lets you off the hook, but also lets them off the hook to a degree. But coming in there, being completely humble and learning about how they do stuff. Now, you might scratch your head when you go home and go, this organization's awesome. I can be here forever. It depends on your level. And if you can deal with that ambiguity, that craziness, or, lack of direction that is inherent to you, it's easy. You will stand out like a leader very, very quickly, and they will rally around you because you give that voice or you give that guidance in such a way. These are the kind attributes that we've got as being military people, that we can help and share it with others, and they will warm to that and they will work with you. You just need to remember, it's a bit like working with the Jundis. They're as loosey-goose as you'll ever get. They're way looser than anybody I've ever met in the civilian world, and that's good. But you can work with them, and if you let them up, like I said to the Jundis when I last worked with them, I said, thank you for opening your hearts to me. I was trying to use language that would, when translated, would appeal to them. But that's what they do, hearts and minds. You open that up, and you take the judgment out of the way, because at the end of the day, you're only judging yourself, or you're missing the opportunity for a great lesson that could be hidden in there somewhere.
Yeah. I'm loving this, mate. I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours. We'll go for another 10 minutes or so. Right. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. What about when you are betrayed, or when something really negative occurs in the workspace? How do you get over that? And I've got a saying that I pass on to some of having an enduring dislike for someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to get sick. But I'm interested in your thing now. Is like when you have an element of betrayal is probably the key word there. How do you get over that quicker than what you sometimes yourself allows you to?
Yeah. Well, first thing, and this is taking something a little bit from the Stoics, the first thing, acknowledge the emotion that you're feeling in the instant, because sometimes you can snap. Sometimes you can come back and go, damn it, or shit, or fuck, whatever that is. And you can go, and you may look for someone to blame. Okay, it may be clear, all right? But what's happened in that situation is that person's shown you how they can be to deal with. They've given you some incredible intelligence. They've given you a real guide about how to work with them. So keep them on board, because you get more done that way. Take that step back, realise that they're like you, a fallible, worthwhile human being. Even if it's only their mother that could love them and could consider them worthwhile, you don't have to at this point. But consider they've made a mistake in your eyes, or made a mistake towards you. You make mistakes every day too. So pick it. Just look at what you're feeling in that moment. Is that anger? Is that aggression? What are you feeling, really wound up and pissed off? And then try to work out, what's causing that? What's at the root of that? Is it a belief about other people? Is it a belief about yourself? How could I be so stupid to think that way? Well, stop beating yourself up, because you're not stupid. You start to think through this and then challenge it. Well, is it true that this person's a complete idiot? No, there's some part of their life that they're not a complete idiot, no doubt. Is it logically follow that just because somebody, cheated me out of something, or betrayed me some way, or tried to make me look like a dickhead, does it logically follow that I have to hate them for the rest of my life? Of course not. It's only going to hurt me. And is it helping for me to obsess over this? If you're starting to answer no to any of those, you're starting to learn how to challenge that negative energy out. If you can challenge that negative energy out, you can then come in a fairly neutral space and go, okay, can I work with this person? Yes or no? Are they like this all the time, or just like this sometimes? Or can I now just read them so much better? That's part of the process that I'll go through.
Love it. Hey, I'd love to hear one of your success stories. Have you got, again, no names, no pact rules, but can you think of a circumstance where you've gone into an organisation where there's a leader or a worker that's really struggling, and you have then taken them under your wing, and you've done your mentoring and you've done your coaching and whatever else, and now they're just kicking ass and blossoming, and maybe if you've got an opportunity to pass on some of the elements of their story that are, the listeners would really find impactful.
Yeah, I've got the best story, and I never thought it would happen.
And this is unscripted, by the way. I did not ask you this beforehand. I'm involved in this conversation. I'm like, tell me more, but I want you to tell me a story around it so I can really, ram home to me and everyone else listening.
Yeah, 100%. And this has become a bit of a cornerstone of how I operate now. Back in 2016, I came into this organisation. We were delivering a computer system. They didn't like it. They weren't interested. They couldn't give a crap. And at the very first briefing, we were doing briefings at 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. because of the shift changeover. These guys and women work, mostly guys. There was very few. There was a couple of women back then. Hopefully there'd be more, but there was all guys at that stage in this briefing. And one of the guys started telling him about what was coming. And, I'm there, happy. And I'm always happy when I get to share stuff when I'm standing up in front of a group. And he was like, look, mate, I've been here 28 years. I've seen everything. This won't last, blah, 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 usual negativity. And I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can from you. I'm not going to let go of you until I've learned what it is I've come here to learn from you. So that night, briefings ended a bit after 10. That night, I stayed there till midnight talking to the guy. Turns out he was the head of the health safety committee at this depot. This was a diesel fleet depot, and we got chatting. And he said, "Oh, what else do you do other than this?" I said, "Well, I run a resilience program." Anyway, it turned out that they were trying to run a program over Rail Safety Week that year to reduce their lost time injuries. So they said to me, "Can you run this program? How long does it go for?" Now, back then it was 2 hours. It's about 3 hours now. In fact, I'm running one tomorrow. I'm really excited. I love any chance I get to share this stuff.
I can feel it, mate. It's good.
Anyway, so they said, "Can you run it twice a day for 5 days?" I was so wrecked by the end of that week, I had to be carried out effectively.
I
ran it for them, and I would show up at 7 o'clock every morning at their start of work brief to try to encourage them to come. And they're like, "Who's this clown? He's come in, he wants us to do this computer system, whatever." I could see the faces on people, they were disgruntled. But at the start of the week, there was a few people coming, but through word of mouth, slowly people kept coming. And there was apparently, I learned this later, one guy who served there who was ex-military who went to the boss of the fleet depot and said, "Can I do it twice?" And he actually came and did the program again during that week. Long story short, 6 months later, I got asked to go to a barbecue out there. I'd moved on, my project had moved me to the next depot and I was working somewhere else. And they said, "We're having a barbecue for no lost time injuries." And they'd achieved 200 days of no lost time injuries. And when the general manager of fleet gave him the award, the first word out of this guy's mouth, who was there on that very night, who was being dismissive of what I was trying to develop and share with them, said, "I'm sure everybody here would agree that Craig's program was instrumental in helping us to achieve this." Now, low lost time injuries, for those who work in blue collar environments, now this is a significantly big deal. Fast forward 3 years later, 2019, I've left this organisation and come back again. All of the fleet managers come and find me. This is 2019, and wanted to have a coffee with me and asked me if I could run my program again. I said, "Oh, okay." And I shared that story, and they said, No. It's over 1,000 days of no lost time injuries you helped us to achieve now.
Wow. So, yeah, that's a huge addition to their bottom line and work safety and morale, everything that goes with it.
But think about it.
3 years.
A lost time injury is everything from, a couple of hours off to see a doctor up to nearly death.
Yeah. Tracking.
Death. How many people have gone home safe to their families because of something that they learned in that program? My goodness.
Phenomenal.
That is the most humbling thing. I don't say that to say, "Hey, man, this work." I say it is one of the most humbling experiences of my life, and that's what keeps me up at night, helping people, taking that extra time. If people want to hang back after a session and want to talk and got questions, I'm tireless in my passion to help people to do this and to try to somehow help men everywhere and women to step back from going too far with their mental health.
Yeah, I bet. Just last little point I want to cover off on, mate, is that I think it'd be another humbling thing you've done is you've written a book.
I have.
Tell us about that. Yeah, there it is on the screen. Reclaim Your Power. I love it, mate. I haven't read it. You sent me a copy about 2 weeks ago, and I've just had a whole week with my wife being over in the US. So I've had to run the household by myself, but I have flicked through it. I've gone through, seen some of the keynotes here, but most importantly, and I've thought about writing a book too, by the way, which is TBC, TBA, ladies and gents. I've got too many fucking R-rated stories that I just don't know would make the print, quite frankly. And I don't want to tell half of a bullshit story, because if anyone reads the book that knows me, they're like, that's not actually what happened. And my wife's like, I haven't even started reading it yet, and I've got about 25 caveats of which I can't cover. So I'm like, well, why fucking bother? Anyway, what was it like writing a book? Tell me.
It was a pretty intense process. I'd already done a lot of preparation for the book, and not really realize it. So I've already produced a 10-module online program, which I was able to turn all the videos on into Word files. So they produced subtitles, downloaded as a Word file, and chunked it all together. And what I ended up using that for was, I knew my process. I made the book from that program, so I knew the chapter order and everything. And I've been teaching this for 20 years. By that stage, I just started writing each chapter out as I wanted to, and then I would go forward to the notes that I'd taken through those things, and through those subtitle into Word doc thing, and just pick out any points I might have missed and just increase and add to it. The impetus for it, though, we'd sold a property, and this might tie in nicely to your business, but we'd sold a property in WA that I'd foolishly gotten involved with and made a $20,000 loss. Now, the $20,000 loss wasn't an issue, but I reached out to the bank and said, hey, you need to enact the lender's mortgage insurance. There is going to be a loss. We're going to be able to cover the debt, but I just need you to do it. And the bank then turned around and stole $16,000 from us. And I had to fight to get that back. And you know what pissed me off? I went, this is extremely stressful, having this money taken from me. I don't want my family to be in a position where $16,000 loss is this significant ever again. And I was doing a mentoring program where the part was to start writing a book. I thought, if I write this book, this is going to help set me up and my family up, so we don't have to experience this again. And as a result, and the opportunities I've been developing from the book has helped to do that. So it was a significant driver.
Bloody hell, mate. It's unfortunately, when a bank sees the value of the property and how much you owe and what the loan to value ratio thinks that needs to be based on your circumstances, if they've got access to your bank account, they can fix that up in their own favour very quickly. And that's what's happened to you, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I went to Avcar, put in a complaint.
Good.
I called them every day. The guy goes, leave it with me. I got off the phone. I went, leave it with me? You're still in my savings here, champion. Leave it with me is not good enough. And they lied. They lied that the LMI provider had taken the money, and the LMI provider said the bank shouldn't be lying to you like that.
Yeah. Well, that's very, very unfortunate. We don't need to name that institution either, but I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, it's a cautionary tale. And unfortunately, those people that have bought properties in WA over the last 10 years or so, put it this way, I've not coached one client that's successfully leveraged from equity growth in that property to go buy somewhere else. So it's one of those things, I suppose. But thankfully, the WA market's not going down anymore. So it has recovered a little bit. But for someone else who bought a property in the resource and mining sector, which is favourable to that region up in Gladstone, I too lost a bunch of money on that one. So it's a cautionary tale, mate. But anyway, you live and you learn, mate, don't you? You live and you learn.
I certainly do. But yeah, what came out of that was the motivation to get this done, and to get it done pretty quick. It took about a month, and I had it knocked out. And then once I'd done my bit of work, and my wife proofread it, she's an amazing proofreader, she proofread it, and then it was just working through all the other parties to get it done. So a book designer is critical. The photo on the cover was from an engagement shoot we'd done with our wedding photographer, who was this incredible artist. He was an ex-cop who just happened to do weddings, and he gave us an engagement shoot, and he had PTSD as well. And we connected over shared mental illnesses that I, at that point, hadn't been diagnosed for. But and I think the quality of that cover photo comes out in what his mastery of the lens and how that was able to work. So there's a lot of stuff. And I even sent him, even though I own the image, I sent him a thing saying, do you mind if I use this? And he was just so happy to be collaborating on something like that. So future books, I'm going to be going out to Tamworth to get photos taken with this guy.
Good on you, mate, looking after your network there. Ladies and gents, as promised when I opened this up, that was a bloody cracking podcast. Craig, I feel like I could sit here for another 2 hours. Daniel, you enjoy that one as well? He's giving you the thumbs up in the background. So I'm sure the contact details for, how to get in touch with you or your YouTube channel, the book, etc., will come your way. At the end of the day, ladies and gents, if you've had a chance to resonate with who Craig is and what he's all about, reach out to him, see if he can give you a hand as well. Craig Ball, thanks very much for being part of Axons Unleashed, mate. You're a legend, and I'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Robert. You too, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, mate. Good on you. See you next time.
See you, mate.